All right, so we are going to shift gears, and we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is marketing innovation, navigating the digital landscape, and these are topics that Rea Dickey, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
These are topics that you have a tremendous amount of experience in, so I guess I'll let you tell your background.
Sure.
And here's the clicker, if you wanted to click through that.
Sure. Hi, y'all. I'm Rea Dickey. Usually the first question I get is, did you know Roland? Because my husband, it is his third generation of the company. Did you meet at work? No, we did not. I had a marketing and technology career independently before I met Roland, and then got married, and then was drafted into service. And so I often get that question, but no, we did not meet at work, but we certainly now live work in every way. But I call it the best HR plan there possibly was, because I'm literally married into my job. But just thought we would throw up some visuals because it is marketing and technology, and that's a lot more fun to look at sometimes than to talk about. So just a little bit about the brand. We are 700 units strong. We have been in business since 1941. We are third generation. We are privately owned. And so we have been around a long time. We have been franchising since 94. And our original 3 franchisees are still with us in their second and third generation. These are interiors. These are our women executive leaders in the company. We have the majority of our executive board happens to be women. We launched a cookbook this year. We opened 75 units in the past year during COVID. We launched 3 e-commerce brands in the past 2 years. We just celebrated yesterday our 23rd month of same-store sales positive, as well as added double digits to our check average. So a lot going on. A busy past 2 years for us in a lot of ways. And then a little bit about the tech that really rolls into marketing. All of our marketing now is digital. We made that shift. We were shifting that way anyway, even though we're a very traditional barbecue brand and certainly a legacy brand, but we're very data-driven. And so we looked around in 2008 and said, after what we call the Great Recession, the first one, I thought that would be the most challenging time of my career. I was wrong. But it was definitely challenging for Roland and I was working outside of the business, and we had been married for just a couple years. And it was one of those times, because he was in the job that I have, I make the joke often that I missed a meeting and got demoted to CEO because I joined to do consulting during the 2008 recession. Hardest time ever, we thought. And we looked back after we had grown, after we had had some success, and really had to decide what we were going to do in 2008. There was a lot of reason to sell. There was a lot of reason to just kind of put it on cruise control. It was such a challenging time for everybody, and we opted to double down. And he said, would you leave your independent agency? Would you leave what you're doing and come and consult? Because we need all hands on deck. We looked back after the 2008 recession in 2009 and said, what would have made a world of difference? Better data, better technology, better marketing. Those were the 3 things. And so we started a 10-year plan, and that's when I joined from consulting as CIO and put that 10-year roadmap in place. That led us up to 2018. So we're now 100% proprietary in our tech. We have our own Spark hospitality technology. We co-shore that development out of Croatia. And it really
What all does that entail?
Sure, that's a great question. That entails our smokestack, our proprietary data system. So we started there. What I kind of say, we went from back door to front door with our tech. But we needed better data. We needed insights. We needed to truly know who our guests were, why they were buying from us. We'd been doing this a long time, but we had grown organically, truly as a family business, and had great economics, great numbers, great profitability, but we didn't have a franchise plan. There wasn't something where my father-in-law said, oh, you know what, I want to be in the barbecue business. His dad opened one restaurant as coming back a returning veteran from World War I and just needed to feed his family. It went really well.
And by the way, that was my favorite restaurant because I used to
Thank
live
you.
right there
Yes.
and went in. I didn't know it was store number 1.
It was. It is number 1. It's been open and operating, has never closed its doors since 1941, since he opened that location. But we grew organically. There was no grand plan. So everything was truly led by the guest, by the customer. And our original franchisees were customers. They begged and begged and begged to say, we want to do this, we want to be a part of this. And finally in 94, they said, okay, we'll give it a try. But we were growing organically, and we didn't have that game plan. It wasn't intentional. So there was no infrastructure. It was all about the food and the folks, but there was no great technology. It was just good business and good barbecue. It was really that simple. When I joined, they had a very, very, very embarrassing HTML single-page website with an email. I'm not kidding about that. I still have that framed in my office to remind myself how far we've come. And it worked. And that was also a really hard sell because you had folks that were doing good business. We'd now been franchised. This was 2008. So we'd had folks that were in business with us since 94. And they said, we can do barbecue without technology. What are you talking about? Why would I make this investment? And it was because of that time in 08 and 09. And we literally said, but we've got to prepare for what we don't know will happen next. And who knew, obviously, that there would be a pandemic, which is truly why we have celebrated 23 months of same-store sales growth, because we had the data, we had the technology, and we had control of that. We could do our own online ordering. We could do our POS. We had a data infrastructure that told us what our guests wanted, how they could still buy from us, how we could survive. I didn't know that's how we would use it. But we started with data, and then we moved into e-commerce and online ordering, and then our POS and our app and our loyalty, and that's our tech.
So you kind of laid the groundwork. You had a lot of that done. I also read you had all types of accolades for some of the work that you did with that. Since Zach stole my introduction, I didn't run down those. But how did the marketing strategy change through the pandemic? I know that you innovated a lot of different things from menu and packaging and everything, but how did the marketing strategies change, and how is that data informing those changes?
Absolutely. So like every other part of the business that was very traditional, we were buying traditional advertising. We had billboards, we had radio, we had cable spot buys, we had a lot of quote unquote traditional media. We shifted everything to digital because we could control it. We could absolutely be nimble, flexible, and data-driven. And so not only did we shift our ad spend that way, which was very important, but we also then had immediate reaction. So not only do we put out, but we watch and learn from. So it's a constant optimization with our spend, with our creative, with our messaging. We have a lot of the budget in search engine optimization. That's very important. I would strongly suggest in a media mix today. You look at that, we use organic social, paid social, every other part of digital media, but a huge influx in search. And then absolutely a focus in star ratings, your customer rating. That's very, very, very important. That is we have a whole team now that is dedicated to nothing but managing the star ratings of our restaurants and helping owner-operators understand that data and use it and truly make that a net positive, and to be very, very, very aware. Someone said it earlier, but there is definitely a correlation in your star rating, and you can all the time likely, definitely with 700 units, I have the conversation often where it's like, well, what about that one guy that was just not going to be happy? Great, that's right, embrace that. But an outlier does not an algorithm or an average make, and so you absolutely have to understand that and manage your star rating as part of your digital media buy.
So I also, as we're going through this, if anybody has questions out here, please chime in, because I want to make sure that your questions are getting answered. So just raise your hand if you want to ask a question. Talk to me about the loyalty program, because I know that you guys did some revamping, and I know that from data and all of the information that you're gathering, you're doing some pretty unique things to be able to drive that repeat business, to drive ticket sizes up, et cetera.
Definitely.
Just talk to that a little bit.
So that was also a piece. That was one of the last pieces that we brought in-house, was our loyalty. That is proprietary to us now. And when I say proprietary, we went through and still go through what we call the BOB process, build or buy, so that we are out there evaluating, does it make sense? We wouldn't program our own spreadsheets. Microsoft has that. They're good at it. Let them do it, right? But everything else, we get to a point point of customization that we want inside our ecosystem, back to that being informed by your own data. And even if you have no desire to go on the technology journey in this way, please stop with whatever you're doing and make sure that you either own or have access to your data, because every part of your business should be driven by what the guest tells you. That's just, it's so important. And with that is what they were telling us they wanted in loyalty. We just had to listen. And then we needed to customize to a point that it made sense. And so we brought that in. We'll actually launch our 2.0 March 1st on our app, loyalty-based. But it's just part of the data ecosystem. And as I think most of us probably know in here inherently, your most valuable guests are your most loyal guests. You have already won their hearts and minds. Now you just want to increase share of wallet, right? Because you already have share of market with them. But share of wallet then is driven by loyalty. It's driven by the reward system that they get. And so they will tell you what they want. They will tell you how they will spend more money with you. And that's really what a good loyalty program should do.
You mentioned, going through the build or buy process and all of that. A lot of folks in the room do have big brands, but a lot of folks in the room are also not at your scale and maybe don't have the resources to be able to go build their own POS and all the rest. That's a massive undertaking. So
it was a 10-year project.
Could you speak maybe to those folks and just kind of give some of the thought process on your advice on that?
Absolutely. And having done it, I wouldn't change it, but I'm also not sure that I would go back and take the journey exactly the same way. It's kind of one of those things where if you knew what you know, would you really do that? Yes, in some ways, but if you never want to do any sort of development, still make sure that everything is connected in your data warehouse, in your data lake. Again, for us, that's Smokestack. But you need to have all of your data flowing into one central place, a dashboard. There are companies out there that do it. You can set up your own. There's even now, when we started, we were piecemealing together, Redshift and SyncSort and Yellowfin, and that worked, certainly. But now you have some really good, more off-the-shelf, easier to use options from a data warehouse, but pull it all in. Pull your sales data in, pull your media buying in, pull your loyalty in, pull your email lists in, pull everything in. Pull your purchasing in, pull your financials in. Put it all together, because it's not only going to validate what you know, it will also challenge that. It will give you insights, and that's what good data does. It doesn't tell you why, but it will tell you what. It will tell you where to look. Being good and successful business people, then you have to dig behind those numbers for the why. You'll learn a lot that we assumed was causation. It's actually correlation, and a good data warehouse will show you that.
Yeah, tremendously important. Talk a little bit about next generation loyalty. Like, there's a massive focus on personalization. There's any way you can gamify, but how are you working kind of all of those exclusive offers and things like that? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, definitely. And I should also caveat this with, again, in the early aughts, late 90s, we were still a punch card-based loyalty program, right there with the cutting edge technology that our HTML web page was. So we evolved to that, to now we do have gamification, we do have personalization, we do have customization with our emerging brands and our e-commerce brands that we have from the past year. We do cross loyalty across all of our brands. That has absolutely taken our very large base for Dickey's and amplified the growth for Barbeque at Home, for example. So you can take those loyalty points for us and spin them across the brand. And so it's enabled us to truly cross-pollinate and build a loyalty base for each individual brand. But it is also based, again, off of personalization. That's what everybody wants. You can personalize almost anything. I say it all the time. We live in that Amazon.com world, right? You want what you want, when you want, how you want it, and you want to get it on your phone, right? Your loyalty program needs to function that way. That is now a base set customer table stakes expectation. So I need to know that my guests want not just a free sandwich, which is, where most loyalty programs would start in like businesses. But it's often not about free. It is about what they value, not what you think they value. And that's really what next generation loyalty is.
Is this like a timely, thoughtful message? Could you give an example of what that looks like?
For us, it is everything from sneak previews, feedback. We oftentimes take our loyalty members that have opted in and say, I want you to care about my opinion. That actually matters more to most of our loyalty guests than getting free food, like truly. And that they want to tell us and have us respond to that. We want, for example, adding cheese. That seems like a no-brainer for us, but we're a barbecue restaurant, right? We didn't have basically queso on the menu. That came from the insights of our most loyal folks in our loyalty program. And so what they'll do is they will take a loyalty reward and be able to have either feedback back and forth, basically a Zoom meeting with our corporate chef and our R&D team. That's one of the most redeemed loyalty points. It jumps ahead of free food. Very interesting to me.
So a loyal guest could literally do a Zoom with your head chef?
Yep.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, when you get up there. And they love it. I mean, it's this great benefit. And then that tells us that that guest, they want personalized recipe cards that we send to them, or they want a signed cookbook, for example, that we did that this past year. That guest cares more about being important to the brand because they're going to spend their money with us anyway. So it was a very interesting loyalty track into that experiential piece with the brand, and that was definitely insights that I had no idea that folks would value.
Since you're open to taking opinions, it's my opinion. I thought it was really neat that you guys added a bar to that original location.
Yes.
That was pretty neat. I really do want some participation if you guys have questions, because I can go and ask a bunch of questions. I want you to also talk before I take Cole's question. I want you to also share very quickly, what are the other brands? Because a lot of folks don't.
Sure. So my husband is the CEO of Dickey's Capital Group. That is our overarching company. I also get the question sometimes, well, who's in charge? And obviously unspoken, I am, but it's really who makes the coffee in the morning. But he's the CEO of the Capital Group, and he deals mostly with our manufacturing and distribution company, our craft sausage company. We actually opened that during the pandemic as well because we couldn't meet demand through our suppliers. So we licensed and opened up an FDA facility, and he oversees that and our manufacturing and distribution because we do all of our own spice and sauce, and that's also been a journey over the past 10 years. But our other food brands, our emerging brands, are Wing Boss, Big Deal Burger, and Trailer Birds, and then Barbecue at Home, which is ready to heat and serve that you order very much as folks have migrated into ordering online and doing so much of the restaurant business with us and with everyone online. They also now want to be able to cook it on their own schedule. So it is mail order barbecue and Southern sides.
I'm hungry now, even though we just ate. Cole, did you have a question?
So my question is, when I think of like the best rewards programs, I usually think of Chick-fil-A and I think of Starbucks. The points-based systems, and Pet Supplies Plus, our brand, just rolled out a points-based system, which we're really excited about. But I also had heard, like Chick-fil-A, from someone that went and visited their corporate office because they bought a bunch of chicken sandwiches, that they had like 40 people dedicated to just their app. So, and it sounds like y'all have a fantastic loyalty program. What does the back end of that look like to create such a good loyalty program?
Great question, and I'll speak just a little bit on Chick-fil-A. I actually, in my previous life, had them as a client with Richard's Group, and I learned so much from them. We started our community marketing program. One of the first things I did with Dickey's was to have worked on community marketing, and a lot of the early stages of their loyalty was built off of that program and rolled it into Dickey's as the base of our program. And at that time, they were very groundbreaking. They had a wonderful and still do have a wonderful Be My Guest program. So they go out and they give away free food to their neighbors anytime they open a restaurant. Still do that. We've modeled after that. It's absolutely successful. But what they have also done is add in their app their loyalty to get that customer data. And we've done the same thing. They started, I think, when I left the brand, working with the brand, I should say, they had about 18 folks in community marketing and loyalty, and so it would make sense that they would be about double that size. We have 12 in Croatia and stateside, split 4 and 8. So there's a lot of back-end development, but it's mostly data warehousing on the back-end side. But again, it is taking and knowing customer type, segmentation, and really getting certainly beyond in the data demographics and even psychographics, but behavior and motivation and intent to buy and intent to shop. What other brands do your guests frequent? Why? What do they value in those brands? When are they coming to you to make those customer choices? All of your data can tell you that.
How are you going about diving into and getting that? I know there's several ways in employing research companies, et cetera, but how are you going about that?
We have data scientists that we employ now, but we started with an outsourced company and then ultimately brought it in-house. That was, again, with the amount of data, that was just more economical for us, but definitely have a data science partner in some way that is taking a look. RMS, there's some great folks out there that will take your data and help you glean insights from it. But for us, it made sense to pull it in-house. And that's really what our back-end loyalty is just all data insight, data-driven, data warehouse, pulling it in. How are our guests behaving? Why are they behaving that way? What are they telling us? And then again, responding to that with what can we offer? What can we do? What can we upgrade? How can we cross-brand? One of the interesting things I learned from Chick-fil-A in their early days of loyalty, again, still very card-based, non-digital, was turning their share of wallet, if you will, their dinner customers or their lunch customers into breakfast customers. And so they would take and be my guest cards for other meal opportunities or other revenue streams. And so we've certainly modeled that. So we always will take and give what the guests want, and then we will suggest to them. For example, someone wants a free cookbook, but they are not yet a catering customer with us. Or they are a catering customer, but we don't see that they purchase individually at home. So we will then add on a lot of additional, well, here, try this, and suggest to try and grow their share of wallet with us.
Right back here. Mr. Rob. Here.
How do you think about franchisee level marketing versus stuff that you drive through the ad fund board or ad fund?
Absolutely should be first and foremost one of the things you talk about after profitability with a potential operator. But you absolutely have to have local store marketing. You have to have a model that you are giving to your operators to say, here is what the national efforts are. Here is a benchmark that you should see in your local store marketing. So for us, we benchmark that very much as a set of KPIs. Are you getting enough BMG redemptions? Are you getting enough loyalty acquisitions? Are you getting enough folks that are adding to your star rating? All right, we have all of those benchmarked, and then that backs into different field tactics that they can employ. We give them those kits and prescriptive actions, but they're also very much encouraged to go beyond that. The best local store marketing, as I would call it, but non-national marketing, if you will, is through partnerships. That is the bread and butter in the restaurant industry is partnerships. You will never sell a large catering without having a good relationship in place for an operator with their potential customer. And that isn't something that you can do from a national fund standpoint. You can let folks know you offer it. You can get into it a little bit in loyalty, like I touched on, but that's still very much a relationship-based, and that's what local store marketing is. And so it really should be part of the KPIs and the reinvestment that they expect to make, both in dollars and direct efforts.
Thank you.
Quick question. You mentioned, or you alluded to, was a challenge to kind of sell this initiative, highly digital initiative across
Yes.
the company. Can you talk about the process you had selling
Yes.
it? And then you mentioned it took 10 years.
I did.
How did you keep everybody engaged?
A lot of prayer. But no, in a sincere way, we came up with this revolutionary idea because we had, again, an ocean of different technology out across the brand because it had been very much just not a focus. And so when we had organically grown, I don't think we even had a master service agreement with a POS provider when I joined it all the way up until 2002 because it was very much just not a priority. And so because we had this disparate technology out across the system, we had to first and foremost get everybody to baseline. So we came up with what we called technology in a box. So we sent a box of technology and the associated support to every store in the system and did a lot of lobbying and getting our committees on board with why this would work, what the benefit was, what the cost was, what the initial cost was, and what the ongoing benefit was. And I made a deal with them. I said, I'll buy it back from you in 2 years if it doesn't work, but make the investment with me. And so that's how we started with Tech in a Box and sent everybody an iPad for back of the house. Well, actually, at the time, we started out with a custom piece and then actually have shifted to an iPad for different development reasons for kind of a set development and stability in the back end. There's nothing wrong with Android. It's just easier because our focus was not to have to play in the equipment business, if you will, much more to be on the software side. And that was just easier. But we sent out a box of technology, got everybody firewalled, got everybody where they could access that. So then we could start a unified starting point. And said, invest, again, if not, I'll buy it back from you. Give me 2 years and let me prove how this will make business easier and better. And went from there.
Ryan, I got a question, if I may.
Yep, take it.
Hey there. Curious what you're seeing or hearing from franchisees on the labor market side in terms of wages and benefits. And I imagine it's a challenge like we're hearing at IFA from all of our members in every category. Talked a little bit about that yesterday with some of the brands here and some of the solutions. So curious there. And then also I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about the Dickey Foundation and what you're doing out of there.
Labor is our single greatest challenge. It is the single greatest pain point that we have. Even March of 2020, right around between the 12th and the 14th, depending on what state our folks were in and the great shift of the pandemic, this month has been harder for us. It has been harder for the system. It's why there was great literal jubilation to continue that 23 months of same-store sales increases for us because we now not only have the lingering pandemic endemic, but we have caught up with the labor challenge and inflation and the ongoing supply challenges, which is also largely labor-driven, and the cost of inflation. So it's hit now. For everybody, as I'm sure everyone's feeling it. But the labor in particular is so hard for our folks. Our hardest hit are actually our multi-unit because they used to be able to share an infrastructure among their stores, and everyone is so tight right now. So we've done a couple things. Very specifically, we've always paid above and recommended, corporate suggested, paying above minimum wage. So we were already playing in the 10 plus to 12 plus, and in some markets 15 plus. So wage wasn't it for us. But first and foremost, having a referral program has made the biggest difference. And our referral program is threefold. So you're incentivized to refer a person. And when you get to 30 days, both the person that referred and the new employee gets a $50 to $100 bonus, depending on the market. Same thing at 60, same thing at 90. That has worked tactically better than anything else. We also shifted to having another employee be in charge of recruiting and meeting staffing pars instead of from a GM, because they were there truly in the trenches knowing what folks were looking for, where to go find like folks, and that's actually been more successful. The GM, or as we would call it, our pit master, pit boss, oversees that, but handing it off to a peer and saying the whole team is bonused if you hit staffing par. It's amazing what you can do when you align folks in that way. So we've brought them in from a front lines, from a pit crew, from an hourly team member standpoint, and said you will all benefit if we can stay staffed. So staffing pars, referral program, and then we've also gone into, for us being in 44 states, a national benefits program. So we pooled everybody, and we now have a national program that has optional health insurance with a mental health component to it, which was very important for folks, and an ask, which just hadn't been an ask before, but certainly was. And then a 401k matching. We've also gone into providing tools that helps with employment sharing. So other restaurants we're sharing team members with now. The biggest thing that we're also hearing outside of referral and benefits is flexible scheduling. So we have more part-time folks than we have ever had before. We used to run as what we would call a shift for an average Dickey's, which is about 18 to 2,200 square feet. It was a U+2 model. And so you had your owner, your pit boss, pit master, and 2 folks could run the full shift, the full restaurant. That included catering, delivery, anything for us. And that would be about an average of 10 folks on staff to cover everything. Now you actually have a lot more, but they're working fewer shifts. And so that's been something we've had to add and help coach through how to handle part-time, how to do flexible scheduling, a lot more emphasis on the scheduler and making sure there's coverage.
How did you go about the employee sharing idea? That was really interesting.
Through mutual pain and desperation, honestly. But no, in a sincere way, you have folks that want part-time or hourly or restaurant work, so they're already there, but they might need to be able to only work that mutual benefit schedule, for example. And so it would be we're in centers with other restaurants or like folks that staff and pay similarly. And so we would just go and say, hey, let's recruit together and let's do this. And so you would have a lot of folks now that want to work 18 hours, 22 hours. And so it might be that we're sharing with a McDonald's or anybody else that's in the same area, the same center.
That's interesting. I asked that because I've seen a technology platform that they literally exist to do that. I don't think it was in the food sector. Might be something worth looking into if I can find the link to it. There's a couple of them, and it's really interesting. Talk about the future, the roadmap ahead. As obviously you're the CEO, but you're very much have your hands in the marketing. It's still, it sounds like, but talk about the future marketing playbook and roadmap.
For us, it's largely led totally by the guest, and they're so good about telling us what they want and what they would like to see. And so for us, it's very, very digital heavy. It's very, very mobile optimized. We went from in March 2020 having about 10%, right under 10%, about 9% of the business was done online. Within 30 days, that went to 90% of the business, which is probably the same for most of us in the room. But we were able to, again, that growth that I was talking about was because it was a difference in degree, not a difference in kind. And so we were certainly able to kind of mobilize our folks to be ready to do that, but they were already doing it. So it was about scaling, not completely inventing for them to go packaging. It was all about optimizing, refining. But that also tells me that what we've seen in data, certainly as we've had stores in Florida, Texas, other markets that have gone back to pre-pandemic behaviors sooner than other states that are still not quite there, markets or municipalities. Our online and our digital business hasn't gone back to pre-pandemic levels. So we are seeing dining rooms build back. We are seeing folks come back into traditional space, but they are still staying on their phones. They are still being digital. So for us, it is largely focused on optimization, on our conversion rate, really digging into the KPIs and putting bandwidth and marketing to raise conversions because we get a lot of traffic. And it's for us jumping from an 8% conversion rate of traffic to a 12%. That's what our sheer goal is, very specifically. And so all of that on the back end to optimize constantly.
Is that through the app? Are you talking about for like online orders? Or
Online
what?
ordering.
Yeah, got it.
Yes. And managing the balance in our third-party delivery partners that certainly are here to stay, I think, but how that is shifting and changing. We certainly want to pull more folks back into our direct ecosystem. So a lot of focus in marketing to folks, communicating with folks that we appreciate our third-party partners, but we would much rather you did direct business with us. And here's a benefit for doing that.
Back to the data, because you
Yes.
own that data at that point.
Quick question, on third party, are you getting any customer level information from your third party partner?
We are. So kind of the build and buy evaluation, we right now partner with Chally as a data aggregator across. That's a great platform. Also, other great options out there, but a Chally type data situation. We also are large enough and early enough, and we were early pioneers into third party that we were able to negotiate getting a lot of data that now isn't available, but we do pull that in.
Can you help some of these folks negotiate that?
I will do whatever I can because I mean, I love our industry, I love our business, and I do think I'm such a data champion that it is so important to have that information because really that's what a third party is. I mean, the gig economy, again, and that kind of goes back to that employee sharing, that mentality where people are comfortable with it, but they're really in the data business more than anything else. So having and controlling any little bit of your data helps.
Any other questions? We'll be moving to close shortly. So, Matt.
Can I re-ask about the foundation?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Oh,
Matt
yes, sorry
mentioned
about
that. We're
I
going to
figured
come back
it's a
to
free
it.
advertising, so.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The Dickey Foundation is our nonprofit arm, and so we support first responders. So we take, and 2 years ago, I started with our Big Yellow Cup. So a portion of our cup sales goes directly to the foundation. It is independent. It is, we give grants to first responders that apply for those, or police departments, fire departments. We partner with Angel Armor to arm with protective gear anyone that applies for those grants. We also, and one of my favorite things is going through the grant requests and seeing what we can supplement and each kind of different needs of different first responders and communities. So if you are in a community with the Dickeys, then any of those first responders can apply for a grant. We also buy a lot of washing machines, something that I had no idea, but they're extremely expensive to have the specialized washing machine for firefighters that releases the carcinogens in their protective gear. Oftentimes, the station won't be able to afford one, or maybe will only be able to afford one. And so you're literally having folks suit up in carcinogens to go back out to fight fires, and having this $5,300 machine makes a world of difference, but they can't get the funding for it often, so we do a lot of those grants.
That's awesome. Well, if we have no other questions, we're going to move to close. We'd like to give you a round of applause. Thank you very much
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much. My pleasure.